Hi guys, welcome back to Pro Studio Live and welcome to the Pro Tools Authority class. Last week we covered working with MIDI in a bit more detail. We discussed different timescales and rulers in regards to MIDI, which included things like setting key signatures, meter, and tempo. We also talked about preparing to record MIDI and recording MIDI, which included some basics of MIDI routing and setting up your MIDI recording. We also talked about virtual instruments and discussed the basics of Expand 2 and some of the basics on Boom. So today, we're going to finish discussing the basics of Boom and Structure Free. This will complete our discussion of the virtual instruments that come free with Pro Tools. We will then finish talking about how to record MIDI in Pro Tools and go into a more detailed discussion of how to work with MIDI data and clips. If we have time, then this will include a discussion of some of the different views when it comes to MIDI, and then we will return to the details of navigating, selecting, and working in Pro Tools. So let's start off today by finishing our discussion of Boom. So I'm just going to make sure that I have Boom open in my session really quickly. So we're just going to go to Pro Tools over here, and I'm going to go up to my Inserts panel and go to Instrument and select Boom. So, at the bottom of the Boom plugin, there's the Kit Selector menu. It's where it says Drum Kit below the Boom matrix display. To the right of where it says Drum Kit, you'll see the red text. This red text is the name of the currently selected drum kit. Here you can click on that red text and choose between the 10 preset drum sets that are available in Boom. Okay, so right here, we just click right here, and you have a bunch of different options right here. So these kits include Urban 1, Urban 2, Dance, Dance 2, Electro, 8.0, 9.0, Fat 8, Fat 9, and Retro. So just like other virtual instruments, you can place MIDI data on your instrument track and also place Boom on your instrument track as an insert, and this will allow you to control Boom playback using the MIDI data on your track. Anyway, the MIDI data uses two ranges of MIDI notes when it comes to Boom. So from C1 to D sharp 2, Boom will play each of the instruments in whatever drum kit you have selected and active. This way you can use the built-in Pro Tools MIDI sequencer to make drum beats, and you don't have to use the built-in pattern sequencer in Boom. If you play a note from C3 to D sharp 4, Pro Tools and Boom will switch between each of the 16 patterns within the current preset. And it switches between these 16 patterns on the fly. So anyway, those are the basics of Boom. And I recommend experimenting with the instrument a bit to familiarize yourself with how it works. And if you missed last episode, check that out for more details on Boom. But for now, for this class, let's move on to Structure Free. So Structure Free uses samples, and by samples, we mean samples of sound sources, which is not to be confused with the samples that we talk about with your session sampling rate, right? So it comes with sample libraries, and the plugin unpacks and allows you to play back those samples. Anyway, Structure Free comes with 60 preset patches. It also has a 64-voice multi-timbral sound engine. And you'll notice that the sample library for Structure Free comes with samples of things like drum sets, drum loops, organs, pads, bass and guitars, leads, electric pianos, and a lot more. So Structure Free can also load a bunch of types of sample libraries, and some of these libraries include the native structure libraries, so EXS24, Sample Cell, Sample Cell 2, Kontakt, and Kontakt 2. Structure Free also supports all of your common bit depths and sample rates, as well as surround sound formats. Anyway, it's really easy to use Structure Free. So just like with Expand 2 and Boom, simply create a stereo instrument track and click on your Inserts panel and then select Structure Free from your plugins menu. So I'm just going to do that really quickly. So I'm going to close out of this Boom here. I'm going to go on to my stereo instrument here. And I'm just going to pick Structure Free right there. And now we have it open. So you'll notice that the structure-free plugin window will pop up on your screen with the sine wave patch loaded by default. Now, there are a few things that you should know on this interface. So first of all, the patch menu is located towards the left of the plugin, right below where it says structure free and right above where it says sine wave. So it's exactly where it says patch. So if you notice, it's right here. See where it says patch right here? This is actually a menu. So it doesn't look like a menu, but if you click on it, it will open up your patch menu with a bunch of options, which I've done here. My computer's a little glitchy sometimes, so it's overlapping the text, but you can see the options here. Below that, where it says sine wave by default, is the quick browse menu. So you can click on this to open up more options, right? So, oops. There we go. So below that, to the bottom of the yellow rectangle that makes up the sine wave patch, you'll also see a drop-down menu with the text MIDI CH for channel to the left of it. And this is called the MIDI channel selector. And you can click on it to select your MIDI channel. So I'll just show you that really quickly. We're going to leave it where it is, but you just click here and you have a bunch of different options. Okay, so to start off, you can choose any patch preset that you like by clicking on the quick browse menu where it currently says sine wave, right? And you navigate through your folders and options to pick the patch you want. When you select a patch, Structure Free will recall the preset configuration for that patch. So I'll just click on one. I'll show you that really quickly. So I'm going to pick a quick start option. We have all these options here. You can see different loops, different electronic kits, vibraphone, stuff like that. You also have the quick start option, 6-string guitar, electronic drum kit. I'm going to do the guitar really quickly. So you can also add more patches to whatever preset you just selected by going to the patch menu where it says patch, right? And clicking where it says patch to open up that menu and then selecting add patch. And then you'll navigate through your folders and options to select another patch. So I'm going to do that really quickly to show you how that looks. So I'm just going to click here. I'm going to go to add patch. And I'm going to do that vibraphone. We'll see how that sounds. Oop, I might have missed it here. So there you go. You see how it pops up and it adds to the patch that I just had. So if you want this new patch to play back to the same exact MIDI data as your first patch, then you should just use the MIDI channel selector to set the MIDI channel for this new patch to the same channel as the other patch in your plugin. So this can be useful if you're doing stuff like a bunch of percussion that you want to trigger on the same sound. You can layer sounds this way easily, basically. So I have A1 here, so I can then switch this to A1 if I want it to trigger from the same exact MIDI data, right? So those are the basics of how to use Structure Free. And again, I recommend using the plugin a bit to become familiar with it and really learn the ins and outs of how it works. But for now, we're going to move on to recording MIDI. So from the last episode, you'll remember that we covered connecting your MIDI controller to your system, routing your MIDI signal to a compatible track, right? And record enabling your track. So from here, you can choose to open the transport window if you like by going to the window menu, and then you choose transport. So I'm just going to show you that really quickly. So we've done this before, but you go to window and you just select transport. I'm just going to record enable my track right now before I forget. So to start at the beginning of your session, you can then hit the return to 0 button in the transport window, which is the left pointing arrow towards the top left of your transport window. So I can show you that. It's right here. So I can hit that, or I can hit the return button on my keyboard to send my edit cursor to the very beginning of my session. So I'll just kind of demonstrate both of those really quickly. I'm just going to switch over to my edit window. So let's say my cursor's over here. I can hit the return key, and now my cursor's at the beginning of the session. Or I can click over here, and then I can hit this return to 0 button, and it'll return it to the beginning of the session. Okay, so then you can check to make sure that your desired MIDI compatible tracks are record enabled. So I just did that earlier. I'm just going to try to record to this one track, so I'm all good. Then you just need to start the record using one of the methods we discussed in an earlier episode. So you can either hit the record button and then the play button in either the transport window or the transport section of the edit window toolbar, or you can hit number 3 on your numerical keypad if you have a numerical keypad to start the record. Or you could hold command and then hit spacebar to start your record. So I'll just show you the command spacebar one really quickly. So I'm at the beginning. I'm just going to hit command spacebar. And, I have count off enabled here. You know what? I'm going to pause this. Sorry, guys. I don't have it enabled. Okay. So command spacebar, and it'll start. What I must have is wait for note enabled. All right. So I'm hitting my keyboard here, and you can see the new MIDI notes being created on my MIDI clip view here. Okay. So I just hit spacebar to pause that record. Another way to start recording is you could hit F12 as long as your operating system doesn't override the function of the F12 key, right? So you'll notice that if you're using the transport section or the transport window to record and you're using wait for note, that the play button will flash green once you hit the red record button before you actually hit the play button. So if you enable the wait for note button, which if you remember is that button towards the left of the MIDI section in your edit window toolbar, and it has the pause icon and an icon that looks like the end of a MIDI cable, then we can try that out. So let's just do that. So it's this pause button and this MIDI cable button. So now I have wait for note enabled. If you guys are following along, I'm just going to clear my clip, my master track clip. So I'm going to do Option C to clear that clip. Then all you have to do is make sure your track is record enabled and then hit the record button in your edit window toolbar, and you'll notice the play button flash green. So I have my track is record enabled. I'm just going to hit this button here and see how the play button flashes green. That's because this wait for note is active. And I could press this button over here too, and it would do the same thing, right? Because these two are the same. So another thing to note is that if you have the count off option on when you hit the record button, before you actually hit the play button, then you'll similarly notice the record and play button flashing during the count off period. And then it'll go solid during the actual recording. So if you just click to highlight where it says count off in the MIDI section of your edit window toolbar, then you hit record, you'll notice that flashing during the count off period. So I can show you that really quickly. Let me just get out of this mode. I'm going to return to 0 by hitting enter. Let's see. So I'm going to click the count off. That's what I was doing here. And then if I hit record, see how it flashes during that waiting period. And now it's going to record. So it just did the count off. And I just paused with the space bar. So it just did the count off and then it started the record. And you can tell that it's in the count off period because it's flashing. So you can then stop recording by hitting spacebar, right? Or by hitting the stop button in your transport window or in the transport section of your edit window toolbar. And when you're done recording and you want to play back what you recorded, simply make sure that the record enable buttons aren't selected anymore by clicking on them to stop them from flashing red. Okay, so I'm just going to do that really quickly. This is really important to do because you then, if you don't click this record enable button to make the track not record enabled, then you can very easily accidentally record over stuff that you want to keep. So it's very important to do that. So then you can just return to the beginning of the session using that return to 0 button or by hitting the return key on your keyboard. And if you want, you can hit the play button or spacebar to start playback and hear what you recorded. Okay, so now let's talk about MIDI data and using MIDI data once it's on your tracks. You'll notice that once you finish your recording, your MIDI data appears in the edit window on your track's playlist in the same location on the track as the audio track's respective audio data, right? So here we have all our MIDI data on this track, this instrument track, and it's in the same spot as the audio data that we have on our audio tracks. Okay. So this means that your MIDI data will share that same timeline as your audio data, but you can view your MIDI data in a few different ways. So this lets you do different editing tasks on this MIDI data, affecting different aspects and attributes of the MIDI data, depending on your view. So within the edit window, you can choose between the clips view and the notes view, or the velocity view. You can also work with your MIDI data and view your MIDI data in the MIDI editor window. And the MIDI editor window is great because you can also access and edit multiple different types of data at once in that window. When you're in the edit window, you can easily toggle between your clips view and your notes view if you hold control and hit the minus key on the keyboard, or if you hold the start key and press minus if you're on a Windows computer. So to use that short key, just click to place your edit cursor on a MIDI compatible track, which places your insertion point on a MIDI compatible track, right? And then you hold control and press the minus key to watch your MIDI data toggle between notes and clips view. So I'm just going to show you that really quickly. So I'm going to do control and that minus. Oh, I'm sorry. I had to put my cursor on my track here. All right, so control and then minus, and it'll toggle between clips and notes for you. So you can also select between MIDI notes view and MIDI clips view by clicking on your track view selector, which is below that solo, mute, and record enable buttons at the head of your MIDI compatible track in your edit window, and then just select notes or clips, right? So that's another way to do it. Honestly, that's how I do it usually, although it's probably pretty useful to know the short code and use that more often. But notes, clips. Okay. So that's the end of segment 1 for today's episode, but we'll take a quick break and then we're going to start up again with segment 2 discussing the MIDI notes view.